want all this in the podcast.
Communication, especially like between men, we're taught to be these, tough dudes that don't have any emotion. And especially like that's how I was raised. I mean, my dad is a Vietnam veteran. Growing up, the whole thing was like, when you get hurt in football, like you don't show any pain. You get into a fight, you do not show any sign of weakness. Otherwise, you're going to be a target. You're going to be a bitch. Money is amazing because it's a tool to get time back. But most people thinking that money alone will make them happy, nope. The most amount of money that you ever make in your life might be the most miserable that you ever are.
This fucking podcast was fire.
In this episode of Thinking Bigger with Kevin Pheley, man, did it get emotional. I sat down with my first employee, Donald Knapp, the employee who is responsible for the growth of my company and kind of a snowball effect into growth that led us from being a tiny little company to doing a couple $1 million a year and having a ton of employees. Donald was really the first employee that helped me scratch together a formula for success that we could, it was a foundation for the success that we have now and that we're continuing to build and grow off of. But in this episode, man, we got emotional and we broke through a barrier that I haven't broken through on the podcast, meaning we were both pretty vulnerable. There may or may not be some tears involved. So enjoy this podcast. Please watch it. Drop your comments below. Let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, please leave us a review if you get something out of this and share it with a friend. Enjoy. Donald Knapp, welcome back to Thinking Bigger with Kevin Pheley. Once again, you're one of the top episodes. I think Dan Fulkerson has you beat, which
Shout out to Dan.
It's a good one to lose to. But yeah, no, you are one of the most requested repeats. So
really
back in the house.
I had no idea. I don't know if you're just saying that, but
no,
that's
and
awesome.
our clips did really well too on Instagram, and that was one of the first episodes.
I had a mullet back then too.
You did.
Yeah.
That was a weird phase for
you. Freshly transitioning from working for you into my own thing, and I don't think I had any hires yet.
Yeah, it was just you. So tell people a little bit about our relationship, how we met, and give them kind of a bird's eye view.
Yeah, so I met Kevin on Grindr about no, just joking. But I met you through my mom, right? How many years ago? 2.5, 3 years ago, right after COVID happened, actually.
So almost, so
right after COVID happened, and I was leaving Starbucks.
Yeah, that was early 2020.
Yep.
And it's early.
Yep. I was leaving Starbucks and just looking for a job, and Kevin hired me, and I was basically doing everything, doing back end work, onboarding, kind of like your personal assistant in a way, but I was basically getting paid to like learn sales. So it worked.
Yeah. It's funny because the job didn't pay super well. I mean, I guess it paid a lot better than Starbucks. What?
Hell yeah.
$3,000 a month or
yeah,
something?
Bro. For someone coming off of Starbucks, I was like, holy shit, dude. Am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, holy shit, $3,000 a month, dude. But
yeah. So, but I mean, the average person might look at that because it's a lot of work and it's hard. Like there were a lot of breaking points for you because you're doing new stuff, right? When you take a new job, especially going from Starbucks, which is like not a lot of thought, not a lot of creativity goes into it, right? I guess a lot of thought, but not a lot of creativity goes to it. So then when you're thrown into a role like what you were doing, which was kind of everything, which you're sort of thrown in with the sharks and we see if you can swim. And you're constantly, instead of just taking orders and kind of following a repetitive session of tasks, you're now having to problem solve, which drains you. So by the end of the day, when you're doing something like this and it's new to you, you just want to break down and cry, and sometimes people do. And that's because it pushes you to that point where you didn't realize that you were capable of something like that, but I watched you go through so many of these different, you would grow, you'd do new things, you'd conquer new tasks, and then you'd hit a brick wall like everybody does. Now, you decided to get over that brick wall, right? Where most people give up. So some people don't even take that opportunity because it's scary, it's risky. And especially when we first started working together, it was just me. We were in this tiny little office upstairs, and now we have a big office suite. But if I were looking at that, coming from a stable job like Starbucks that's always going to pay, right? And I see this guy who has a business that's barely even functional. Most businesses fail. So statistically, it's a terrible bet if you're going with the safe side of things, right?
Sure.
But so what did you think when you first were working for me? When it was just us, we were doing like $5,000 to $7,000 a month, which with rent, ads, marketing, payroll
wasn't even breaking even.
Yeah, I mean, I was drowning, right? But what did you think when you first came on?
Dude, it was nerve-wracking. It was scary. Like there's a specific, because we're in the same building, right? For the people who don't know, there's a specific smell when I'm coming from the game room where we play ping pong to the 5th floor.
Yeah.
And that
down
smell,
those stairs,
dude,
right?
I have nostalgia of just being nervous as hell. Like, what does Kevin have for me today? Like, I was like, dude, I don't know if I'm going to be able to handle it. I'm going to have to get on Zooms, talk to people.
Yeah.
And I was, extremely introverted. So, but yeah, it was definitely just like, what's going to happen today kind of feeling.
Talk a little bit closer to the mic.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah. And if you can just like explain what you were doing when you first started working for me. And quick side note, we said this in the last podcast, but Donald is the reason why my business blew up. Now we're doing millions of dollars per year. But without that first initial hire, Donald, or without Donald, it would not have grown as fast. Now, I would have eventually hired somebody and it would have worked out, but it's one of those things that really makes me believe in like divine intervention or placement where people meet for a reason, because it just happened so flawlessly. And then look at everything else that has come from it, right? Your brother Carlos works for me now, who, by the way, shout out to Carlos. Carlos runs all the equipment for the podcast, editing, uploads, all my social media. So shout out to Carlos.
Shout out Carlos.
But anyways, so sorry.
But yeah, you mentioned divine timing, and you said like all these things that are coming from it. Not only that, now like I was able to hire, my family. Like I have 4 of my, I consider Ray like family too,
Yeah.
So, which is really cool. But 4 of my guys who work for me, like they all like are making a livable wage. They all make good money now. And that came from starting to work for you. So that's awesome. Also, going back to like the divine timing thing, I didn't get to mention this on the last time we spoke, and it was something that really stuck with me, which was when I like that time period in my life, right, was kind of like my spiritual awakening. I kind of think that sounds a little corny now just because it's like super overused, but I started looking into like synchronicities and numbers and that kind of thing, right, patterns. And I remember like when you texted me the address to this place, you were like 1111, and I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. I was like, oh yeah, I was like kind of like, okay, this is awesome. Come to find out your birthday's freaking November 11th. And then that's when I was like, okay, this is insane.
Yeah.
Here we are, But what I see that as is just kind of like trusting your gut instinct. Because I know you said like the safety part of like Starbucks, but it was just like a gut instinct thing. And I want to give a lot of credit to my mom, because it's like even when maybe I can't trust or don't go with my own instinct, fortunately I have that guide to be like, hey, trust me, go this way. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Now that I'm like, now that I'm 24, I know I'm not like old or anything, but now I'm starting to learn to trust my own instinct, and it's working. But before, when you're a young kid, it's harder to do that, like you're unsure of like what's right and what's wrong. So I'm extremely grateful for my mom, because she's helped like direct me in this path.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I mean, your mom is so spiritually in tune too. I mean, some of the things that she said, I'm just like, how do you know this? Like very, very weird, in a positive way. But yeah, definitely makes you think. But I think one thing that's important, and for anybody listening to this, no matter where you are in your life, no matter how old you are, what job you're working, if you want it bad enough and you will put in the work and you will be a sponge, meaning you're constantly learning, there is nothing that's off limits. Like when I look at our 2 companies, which Donald has a company now similar to mine. When he left, went on his own, he opened a marketing company that's basically the same exact concept, same offer, just a different audience. So we target real estate agents. One of my other companies that does the same thing targets auto detailers. Donald targets solar reps, people selling solar. And Donald has 4 employees right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have, well, I mean, we have a bunch, but the ones that are in this office, when I think about it, everybody's making really good money. Nobody has a college degree, no, except for Rachel, but she doesn't use it. Pretty much everybody worked some kind of basic lower entry level job before. Starbucks. Rachel and Lauren both worked at
Phil's Barbecue.
Ray worked at Albertsons.
Julie worked at like a yerba.
Yeah,
yerba
at a
shop.
coffee shop. And how about your other employees?
Yeah, George was working for like security at like Petco Park.
Yep.
So elite.
Part-time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You already mentioned Ray was working at Albertsons. I think AJ was working at like Jersey Mike's and Lids. So 2 jobs. Eric was working at Burger Lounge. I was like, who am I missing?
Yeah. So, and all of these guys are making money and impacting a company and helping grow a company. By the way, I don't think you understand how rare it is to be able to make a company profitable as fast as both of us have. And it really helps that we're selling a service-based product, not like a physical product that we have inventory for, where there's a lot of other moving pieces. But the fact that we have both started businesses that almost immediately are profitable and are consistently growing at just a ridiculous rate, statistically, the chances of that happening are like less than 1%. I mean, and the fact that we can do that repeatedly. But I think that it comes down to the hustle of like us putting in work and getting over our fears and pushing when we're uncomfortable, and that knowledge of consistently learning and applying what we learn. I think the reason why most businesses don't grow is they don't have sales knowledge and expertise, and they don't take those risks that they need to. They play the safe game, which is what the world sort of teaches you. And that brings me back to my point where instead of staying at Starbucks or going to school, getting a degree, getting, that common way of having a career, you took the unsafe route, which ended up being the most safe way that you could have gone when you think about the end result, So what do you have to say about that?
I 100% agree with you. I think because you mentioned like the odds are super, super rare and unlikely. But honestly, like I think kind of ignorance is bliss in the sense of like not overthinking that fact. Because I feel like a lot of people like they worry about that, like maybe hearing you say that they're like thinking, oh, I don't think I can do it. Like he's right. Like the odds of that happening are so little, but I believe it's really your mindset. It's your thinking. Like it at no point in the start of my business did I think this isn't going to work.
Yep.
At no point was I like, oh, I'm going to throw in the towel. And I think a huge part of that success is really sticking with it. I think that's where most people fall off, right? Like I can think of a couple of people who take the right steps, take the right actions. They look out for mentorship, but they don't stick to one thing. And then, you're not going to get much out of it if you aren't consistent with it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. When I started in the entrepreneurial world, I had left a comfortable 6-figure sales job in Boston, moved out here where I knew nobody. And I immediately, I remember I rented this apartment. I had this sick ass apartment when I first moved here. And the landlord was just this guy that owned the apartment. And I remember when I was moving out, this guy was an entrepreneur, successful dude, owns a bunch of real estate, whatever. But I remember he said something that was like a backhanded, kind of a bitch ass thing to say. But he said this backhanded comment. And I had started an Amazon business. I had started my marketing company. I was doing the credit card. I mean, I was doing so many different things. I think I had like 5 businesses that I had started. I thought that, I need multiple flows of income, so I'm going to start these, 5 different businesses. Well, if you focus on one and you just go hard with that one thing in mind, like you said, you're going to find success. You'll fail a bunch, but you will eventually find success. But if you try to build 5 businesses at once, it's like trying to chase 5 rabbits at once. You won't catch any of them, right? So I remember when I was moving out and he was giving me my deposit back and whatever. And the last thing he said was like this snarky bitch ass comment where he was like, hey, good luck with your 5 businesses. And I remember being like, fuck you, motherfucker. I didn't say that to him. Or maybe I did, but I just remember that feeling. I was just so like kind of hurt by that because I sort of looked up to this guy, right? And I kind of wanted him to be a mentor, and he just looked at me like I was a fucking idiot. And I was trying to build 5 businesses at once. It was dumb. It was not going to work. His approach was terrible. He could have been like, hey, bro, here's why you shouldn't do this. But the world doesn't care about you. The world cares about what you have to offer. And most people from the outside looking in don't care whether you succeed or not, right? But I think that if you have the belief that you are going to make shit happen, it will. And that's exactly what you've done. And that's why I believe that being stubborn is a superpower.
Agreed. Yeah, being obsessive and stubborn, I think, are like key traits to being successful in business. I also owe a lot of my success to journaling, I think. I think writing down the things that you want as if you already have them, writing out your thoughts for the day, just writing things down, putting pen to paper. Like, I look back at my journals, and I wanted to bring one today, but I look back at my journals and I'm like, holy shit, I've crossed these things off my list. Like, I have these things. And maybe it's not the writing it down, but it's just like telling yourself, your brain is like recording the fact that you believe it enough to physically do something. And then also you have to put action in, right? But like, we're there. And I remember, me and Carlos, my brother, we've shared a room our entire lives, dude. Our entire lives up to the age of 19 or 20, whenever I started working for you, right?
Yep.
Like, and we were at an apartment. It was my mom and my siblings, right? So us 4 and my mom. And I remember that was when I was getting into everything. I started journaling, and we all had a meeting together to sort of, quote unquote, like manifest, or like basically like, mastermind together. Like, hey, we all want a house. Let's all like just talk about our new house, what we want in this new house. Like, let's visualize it together as a family.
Yep.
5-6 months later, we're renting a home, but it's our home, like it's a house, it's not an apartment.
And it's a badass house,
and
too.
it's a sick house.
With a big ass pool.
With a pool, dude, with a pool. And we have our own rooms, like, and it's just like that stuff. Energy is everything. Energy is 100%. It matters, like the way that you think about yourself, the way that you think about your life, the more you focus on the positives and what you're grateful for, even through the hard times, the better everything works out for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that when so your subconscious mind controls everything that you do. And if you're doing the same things every day and you're training your subconscious mind that this is what I do. I get up, I go to this job that I don't like, I sit in traffic, I come home, I pay my bills, I go to sleep, I do it again, right? If you're training your brain that is your everyday routine, your brain is going to subconsciously continue to reap those kind of expectations, right? But when you make a change, when your brain starts to look at the world differently on a subconscious level, your reality changes. So when it comes down to manifesting, people always want to say, oh, manifesting, it's this magical thing. I think there's science behind it. I truly believe that when you start to think of something in your mind and you start to feel the feeling, you open up probabilities that never would have happened. Just by changing your thinking, you're literally changing your timeline, right? I don't think it's woo-woo. I don't think it's magic. I think there's science behind it. And I think that one day, a long time ago, people thought electricity was magic because they couldn't explain it, right? Looked like an electric light coming from the gods or whatever.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So I think that when we say, oh, I don't want to be woo-woo when talking about manifestation, I think that you need to be very clear that manifesting is one thing in terms of visualizing and having the stuff become reality, but putting in the fucking work is when it really happens, because without execution, it's not going to happen. You can sit and think about what you want all day, and that alone will push you closer towards that. But if you didn't show up, when you didn't want to show up, if you didn't put the work in, if you didn't consistently push yourself far beyond your comfort zone every single day, and if I don't see employees crying at some point, I know they're not growing fast enough, because you need to hit that brick wall. I know that sounds fucked up, and I don't mean I want employees to cry, but when I see somebody hitting that wall, it is such a good sign, because it means that they're breaking down a barrier of what they truly believe in themselves, and they're reaching another height. And I've watched you go through it so many times. But that blissful ignorance, and where I say I think stubborn is a superpower, I mean, that describes you, right? And me. You left here, you said, I remember one day you came to me and you said, my goal, just to be clear, within 1 year is to not work for you anymore. I want to do my own thing. And all the way up to that point, there were every reason not to go off and work for yourself, but you trusted that beacon, that guiding light inside of you. And you decided, no, I gave myself this deadline to do this, and I'm doing it. And I think you did it earlier than a year.
Yeah, it happened sooner than we expected.
Yeah, and we kind of pushed you to do that. I remember we had that conversation, and we were sitting in the office, and you were closing deals, still doing sales for me. And I remember looking at you and being like, you need to go.
You were like, when are you leaving?
Yeah.
And I was like, what do you mean? You're like, when are you going to do your own thing? And then I just sat there and I was like, it'll happen. But yeah, it kind of like, honestly, it kind of like sat wrong with me. I was like, why the fuck is Kevin, telling me why am I here? Like
little reverse psychology.
He's bluffing me. He's bluffing. And I still remember like after leaving, I want to say maybe like a month or two after leaving, Nathan texted me like, hey, any chance you still want to come back?
Yeah. And like, Nathan is my business partner, by the way.
Yep. And I was like, absolutely not, bro. There's no going back.
Worth
now.
a try.
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, no, but I think when we had that conversation, I was not bluffing. I truly was like, because when you're working for me, I'm making 6 figures a year off of your work, right? So instinctively, I don't want that to go away. But I realized one day, I'm like, okay, first off, I need to realize that this relationship is changing. You're growing. And that's why I do what I do. I want that for everybody, right? But a little selfish piece of me was like, I don't want this guy to go anywhere. He's such a great asset. And also, like, he's going off to start a business. Is it too soon? Is he, like, there's always that, like, dude, what if he goes off and fails? Like, now I feel kind of responsible for that. But I remember sitting in the office and it just clicked, like, dude, I got to serve this kid. Like, that was my intention from the beginning, right? And that's why I was like, dude, you got to, like, get out of the nest, go do your own thing. And it's worked out tremendously. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit. So for anybody that has listened to this podcast and my content, whenever I talk about the ability to make more money, it is always around skills, particularly around sales. Now that you started your own business, how do you think that would go if you did not have that 2 years of sales experience under your belt?
The absolute failure. It wouldn't have worked.
Right.
It would not work.
Right.
At all. And then I remember your buddy Josh came to visit, and he's a, very business oriented guy. And I think you asked him, like, hey, what do you think about Donald starting his own thing? And he was like, I don't think he's ready yet. And like, it kind of hurt me, but dude, that was only like a few months into sales before you even launched your new product.
Yep.
So I didn't even really have like the training wheels off.
And you were selling that same product. So if you had left then, and that may never, we maybe never would have launched that new offer, which is now making us literally millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Like it's also crazy. And to go back on the manifestation thing, I was up at my parents' house and my mom, so just a little side note, my sister committed suicide in November of 2019. My parents were thrown into some pretty rough financial circumstances from that, and my parents never really made a lot of money. I remember sitting in my parents' driveway, and my mom broke down and was like crying, and was basically telling me that they were having some financial issues. And dude, that hit me so hard, and I sat in their driveway and I just pictured like, cause I was making good money, but not like millions. And I sat in their driveway and I just looked around and I was like, I know that I can do better. I know I'm worth more. I know I can make millions of dollars, but I don't know quite how I'm going to do that, right? The offer that I was at, we were making good money, but we would have to have a team of like 20 salespeople. And that alone is like its own thing. But I remember sitting and just visualizing, and I just told my subconscious mind, the universe, God, whatever, I need to make millions of dollars and I need to do it in the next year. And I need to figure out how to do that now. So brain, mind, God, universe, show me how to do this. And that was up in Oregon where my parents live. It's like a 14-hour drive from there to here. The next day, as we're driving back down, it's me and my girlfriend, and it just clicked. Like it was floating by me, and I just picked it out of the ether. And I had our new offer. I had our new I had everything. It was like I just pulled a puzzle that was already put together from the air. And I said, Karina, my girlfriend, I need you to drive right now. And I hopped in the passenger seat, and for the next 6 hours, I built out the funnel, meaning like the technology behind it. I built the website. I built the sales funnel. I built the text sequences. I built everything. I launched it. And before we stopped at our stopping point, I had 12 sales. I just sent a text blast to all our existing leads, and I had 12 sales. And I was like, oh, this manifesting shit is real and it's available to us at any time. But that want and need and that conversation that I had with my parents was so heartbreaking, where I was like, my parents can't do this on their own. And I stepped up and I figured it out. And now I pay their mortgage. Now there's so many different things that I can do. And, man, this is like probably the most emotional I've gotten on the podcast, but
I love the vulnerability.
It's good. Yeah. And, but yeah, I mean, dude, that desire and like watching your family go through something, and you've dealt with that too, right? Like you've watched your mom break her back working a good job, but a job that doesn't pay her enough to provide for you guys. And I think that is probably the number one fuel to your fire, which is why you're so successful. You're helping your family, you're helping your friends, you're helping yourself and everybody around you. And I feel like there is nobody that loses from that.
100,000%. That's the reason that I'm doing what I'm doing, and I genuinely believe I wouldn't be successful if the purpose of it, if my why wasn't for my family, and for the people working for me. And, everyone around me, like and of course, dude, I love money's cool. Money's fun, right? I like to be able to spend stuff and not worry. That's awesome. But I've thought about this over and over again. And it's like, dude, if I had this money and no support system, it would be the loneliest shit ever,
Well, you hear about people winning the lottery, right? And they're usually somebody, rich people don't really play the lottery. So it's usually somebody who's like lower middle class or poor, who just got lucky, and they win 20 million, 50 million, whatever, right? This crazy, absurd amount of money that they never would have touched in their life ever. And they go from chasing that next level, right? Because when you're closer to the bottom, there's a lot to look forward to. And it almost like not having it, but chasing after it almost gives you meaning in life on its own. And when these people then go from driving an old Toyota Corolla, renting a small apartment, barely getting by, to having literally anything that they want, everything. They go get a brand new Ferrari. They go buy a 4,000 square foot house. They go take trips, ride in private jets. They go do everything, literally everything that they thought would make them happy, and they realize they've never been more miserable. And they were happier before. Money is not what you want. And without your family, money is nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now, I'll tell you, money makes everything easier in the world, especially if you're broke. Money is amazing because it's a tool to get time back. It's a tool to buy you freedom and to get you to not be a slave to the system. But most people thinking that money alone will make them happy, nope. It might be the most amount of money that you ever make in your life might be the most miserable that you ever are. Money multiplies and grows whatever your current state is. So if you're a miserable prick, well, you're going to be an even more miserable prick with money. But if your goal is to serve people and to help and to provide value to others, when you get money, you're going to be able to do that more.
Yeah, and I think that was a misconception I had, and I know, like, I talked to some of my buddies, and they still think this way, and they think, you know, I have money problems. I just need money to fix my issues.
Yeah.
But it's not. It's an internal thing. Everything is internal. Like, okay, let's say I give you $1 million, and I don't have $1 million yet, but let's say I give someone $1 million, all your money issues are gone. You haven't worked and fixed the inside. It's the exact same thing you're talking about, the lottery thing. It's like, it starts within you, and then everything else, you know, everything else is a reaction to that. So the reason I think I'm successful is because I've done some of the inner work. I still have so much work to do, but I realize, like, money isn't the factor of happiness. You know, a girlfriend isn't the factor of happiness. You know, alcohol, drugs, music festivals, that doesn't fill, you know, I think everyone kind of has this void we're trying to fill, and it doesn't. Material buying stuff, it's short term, and then long term you're like, oh wait, I'm still sitting here by myself in my head. So if you can't make that place in your head the most peaceful place, you're never gonna be happy, you know?
Yeah. All right. So I want to tell everybody a story. And this is about growth. And it might be a little vulnerable, but we just had a quick break. Donald's cool with me sharing this.
For the record, I don't know what story you're sharing, but I'm super cool with it. I don't care.
So you'll remember this, I think. And I want to hear your perspective, because I'm sure you'll remember it. But when you first started working for me, you first came into the role, and I was kind of giving you every task that I should not be doing. And if you're running a business and you're thinking about hiring somebody, you need to do it, and you need to do it like yesterday. And all you have to do is find the tasks that you're doing in the day that you could hand to somebody else that's going to buy you time to then spend more time on sales and marketing and the things that bring you more money. So when Donald worked for me, my goal was to buy back my time. I paid this kid full time, took a big chunk of my salary, basically brought my salary to zero so I could buy back my time. But the short-term investment paid off because now I was able to bring in more money, and we doubled the first month that you were there. We 4x'd within a few months, 10x within a couple more months. I mean, unreal what we did. But, you know, there's a story that I remember is, you know, during our days, we would take a break and we would go upstairs and play ping pong, right? And I remember I could just tell, like, you were just not in a great mood. You were like, something was bothering you, right? And I was like, what's wrong, man? And you just fucking broke down and you cried, and again, like, you were pushed to your breaking point because you'd never been there. And you were like, I just feel like I'm your bitch. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, what? What do you mean? You're like, you're telling me to do all this stuff. I'm like, bro, you're my employee. Like, this is what I pay you for. Like, I'm not mean to you. I'm not rude. I'm nice about the way. Maybe I don't know. Maybe you see it differently. But do you remember
Kevin
that?
is absolutely an asshole in the best way possible, though.
So tell me what was that like, being on the other side?
Yeah. So if I'm remembering correctly, if I'm thinking of the same situation, which I believe it is, and I think I was wearing like a blue collared shirt with white stripes this way from H&M. But I remember trying to. Dude, a huge issue I've had growing up, and I'm still learning, but I've gotten way better, is being able to communicate how I feel. That's like just in general.
Yeah.
Like as a man, I think it's difficult for men to communicate how they feel, because it's like a constant thing of like, oh, you know, if you come off this way, you're a bitch, or if you come off this way, you're an asshole. I just feel like we as men don't give each other enough, society doesn't give us enough wiggle room to learn that, right? And I didn't necessarily have, you know, I did have a father figure, and I wanted just give my thanks and just say I'm super grateful for him. Fuck.
Lean into it.
Ooh.
Lean into it, bro.
Yeah. I want all this in the podcast. But super grateful for my dad Herman, because he was my father figure. But I think, he was doing the best that he could. And we're not always taught as men how to fully express ourselves and be vulnerable, right? And, bro, it wasn't easy transitioning from Starbucks to working for you. And I did feel like your bitch. And now I understand, that's how being an employee works. But that is something I'm super grateful for, is being able, like, sales teaches you that too. You have to communicate things a certain way so that it doesn't come off as, rude or arrogant, while still getting your point across. So I'm just extremely grateful for that. And that's kind of what that story that you brought up reminded me of just like, I remember telling you, like, dude, I've never been taught how to communicate my feelings.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's okay, bro. Give me a hug. It's okay. And I was like, thanks, bro.
Yeah. I remember I said, what did I say? Real men cry or something like that.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. But like communication, especially like between men, we're taught to be these, tough dudes that don't have any emotion. And especially like that's how I was raised. I mean, my dad is a Vietnam veteran. He's a tough dude. And growing up, the whole thing was like, when you get hurt in football, like you don't show any pain. You get into a fight, you do not show any sign of weakness. Otherwise, you're going to be a target. You're going to be a bitch, right? And I think that that's kind of changing. I think that there's something to being tough and strong and being able to handle stuff. But I think there's also, and I don't think maybe you've seen me cry maybe once. Like I don't think I cry a lot in public.
6 times. No, I'm just kidding.
Have you ever seen me cry?
I think one time, but it wasn't like real, like how I just cried. It was more just like tearing up,
Yeah. Well, but if I do that, I do it on my own. But I think it's healthy to be able to express that. And I think that if you don't, it bottles up inside, and then all of a sudden you're punching a picture of your family for no reason.
And so it goes back to like sitting alone and being at peace in your mind, and allowing those things to bottle up is basically you're sacrificing your own peace of mind because of like fear of, this, people might see me this way. But I think there's still a lot of truth to that, right? I think there are a lot of circumstances where a man needs to show like, nope, I'm a man right now, and I need to set that aside for this moment, right? That's like if you're with your family or your significant other, and you need to protect her, like you're not gonna fucking cry if some dude's trying to fight you. You know what I mean? Like in those situations.
Yeah. But that's the difference between being a man and being a man. Like I think the definition of a man is somebody who's ready to die for their family. Like I think that brutal caveman shit is in us, and I think it needs to be. And I am a firm believer that somebody breaks into my house, if I'm going to die defending my girlfriend and my dogs and everything that I have, right? And that's fine. But somebody who expresses their, somebody who cries doesn't make them any less of a man. In fact, I think it makes them more, because they feel comfortable in their own skin to be vulnerable. And, again, like, I think that people just need to let emotions flow a little more freely and not worry too much about what people think. And, I think that just to be clear, I'm not talking about, I'm not pro toxic masculinity. I don't think that men should feel bad for being men, but I do think that we need to be a little more open with our emotions, and maybe less men will commit suicide.
Boom, mic drop.
So Don, tell people where they can follow you.
Yeah, so I do have a personal Instagram. It's not, I don't share it for everyone, but I'm always open to networking. You know, Kevin's taught me that your network is your net worth. So Instagram is the Don. The second Don has a 0 in it, and you can follow me there. Check out our website, Sunny Solar Leads, if you want to see me cry some more on there. No, I'm just joking. But yeah, sunnysolarleads.com if you want some solar leads. Dude, thank you for this, bro. This fucking podcast was fire.
Yeah, dude, we got to do more of these. This won't be the last one. Pleasure doing business with you, sir.
Likewise, bro.
Thanks for coming on.